Welcome to Writer's Way Podcast, the podcast where we step into the enchanting world of authors as we dive into their unique writing journeys and the captivating tales behind their stories. I'm your host, Jessica Wilkins, and today I'm honored to introduce the author of War is Hell, a tale of war and one man's search for meaning. He was a naval officer and a Korean War veteran with a lifelong passion for history, drawing from a family legacy of military service. A UC Berkeley graduate, an aerospace engineer, he brings authenticity and insight to his gripping stories and combat and the human search for meaning in war. Please help me welcome Arthur Edwards. Welcome to the show, Arthur.
Thank you. It's good to be here.
The pleasure is ours, Art. Today, we'll be talking about your powerful book, War is Hell, with your experiences in service and the deeper meaning behind your research or your search for understanding in the midst of war. And to start with, what caused you to write War is Hell? What inspired you to share this particular story?
Well, I grew up during World War II when, men were going off to battle. As a teenager, I wondered why went through their heads when they had to pull the trigger, so to speak, on an enemy, how they were able to justify it in the long run. And as I grew older, I decided it was time to write a book about the subject and try to share the things that probably go through men's heads as they are killing another human being, even though they're the enemy. Really been an interesting subject to me, and I've never been able to find anyone to answer the question, the problem, satisfactorily, so I thought I would delve into it with a book and see if I could come up with any answers.
Wow, that's such a compelling reason, and I can already tell that from your experiences and reflections, which brings incredible authenticity to your writing. Now, you clearly write with a deep understanding of military history and the human side of war. So what background do you have that made you so familiar with this subject?
Well, my dad had been in the Navy in World War I, and as a kid, I would, sit on his lap and ask him to explain to me what it was like to be there and to pull the trigger, so to speak, and how he was able to justify it. And he came up with some very interesting responses, but nevertheless, it seems to be an issue that no one has totally solved yet. Human beings are still wondering why we're killing other human beings. There seems to be no clear answer, no straight justification for doing so other than they are the enemy, so to speak. And so it always got me thinking as a kid how we could, delve into how we survive this mutual killing that our human beings seem to be going through in life. And we have for years, and even today it doesn't seem to modify very much. But that's what got me started on the subject and delving into it.
Wow, it's clear that it's isn't just history for you, and it's something you've lived and studied with respect.
Yeah, that's absolutely true.
Mm-hmm. So let's talk about your education. Were you educated, and how did your studies shape your perspective as both an engineer and so as a writer?
Well, yes, I did a study at University of California, Berkeley in mechanical engineering, but I also studied naval science as I was working toward getting a commission in the Navy. My studies in engineering didn't do anything to answer my questions about the subject of this book, but studying naval science, we studied all the battles of history, from for thousands of years all the way up to today in great detail. Rather than answering my question, it made me it gave me more questions to search out than as I was studying with men who had actually pulled the trigger, so to speak, on other people and actually killed the enemy. And I questioned them as about, what it was like and the justification and how they lived with themselves. And nobody had a really good answer. They just kind of shrugged their shoulders and said that, that's what they had to do. So it made me think and wonder more than gave me answers, but got me interested in someday I needed to write a book on the subject and see, with all the studying I could do, what history tells us about what human beings go through when they endure that kind of thing.
Well, that's fascinating, and it's always interesting to say how, technical background can influence how someone approaches the craft of writing. And I truly believe that you are such a curious individual indeed. In your search from your childhood until now, you're still searching on those what you wanted to have answers on, and despite of it, you still move on and seek for those answers.
Yeah, that's correct.
And for our listeners who may not know, what was your education level?
Okay, I was, as I started to say, I was attending the University of California, Berkeley. I got a bachelor's degree in mechanical engineering and naval science. Then later on in life, when I was working as an aerospace engineer, I went back to college and got a master's degree at San Jose State University, cybernetic systems. And I did some teaching as well as working in the aerospace business. I did some teaching in how to manage people and how to get things done through other people. And it all kind of just made me more interested in finding the answer to some of my questions about life and about how the various things we do affect our lives and, cause the way we live. And I'm still looking.
What a journey it is. And the foundation clearly served you well, both in your career and, of course, your ability to bring depth and accuracy to your stories. And did you ever take any English or book writing courses in college, or was writing something that developed more naturally for you over time?
Well, to answer your question, no. Engineers typically, at least at Berkeley, don't take any English courses unless they want to. And I didn't. I used to argue with my English teacher in high school, saying engineers don't need to learn how to spell. Well, that didn't go over very well with my English teacher. He used to kid me, you need to know as much about English as you know about mathematics. But I didn't discover that she was absolutely right until well on after college. And when I got into figuring out how I was going to put some of my thoughts into writing, obviously meant writing a book. And I wanted to make it interesting as well as somewhat controversial and filled with facts and experiences I had. So, of course, I didn't write it till later in life when I'd had experiences contradicting what I had learned in school. But no, I didn't, unfortunately. And I'm always sorry I didn't have some English courses in college. But fortunately, I married an English teacher and had her read my books, and she was very, very helpful. She always kept saying when she finished, "Boy, you should have had a course in English." But she was very, very helpful. Got me through some pretty rough spots.
Oh, how sweet. And that's inspiring, So many authors take their own unique path to writing. And to yours, of course, you just have it in you. It's your calling. And yours is such, a great example that it is not necessary to take English courses just for you to be an author or to be a writer. And all you have to do is just do your research, as you have did.
I agree.
And your wife is such a sweet one, wherein you, who helps you with your writing. She's such a sweet one, indeed.
Yes, I miss her terribly. She died last year,
Oh,
and it's tough getting along without her.
I'm sorry to hear that. Well, anyways, just to lift up your spirit so that, you will not be sad. You serve as a naval officer and are a veteran of the Korean conflict. Can you tell us a little about your service experience and how it shaped your worldview and perhaps your approach to writing this book?
Well, being a naval officer, of course, you're immediately in charge of people aboard ship, and they throw you into a situation just because of your rank, not because you know anything, but because you're an officer, so therefore you've got to be good at dealing with people. And I learned very rapidly, what you need to know to be dealing with people, and teaching people to kill other people is a part of the issue. And it was a very, very intriguing, interesting part of my life because I learned things that you don't learn in college or in other parts of life, going to war for your country and utilizing deadly force and getting other people underneath you to do the same thing is a part of the whole issue. How can you justify not just killing people yourself, but in training other people to kill people? And as a gunnery officer, it's one thing I liked about being in the Navy is you never knew how many people you killed because you couldn't see them. They were oftentimes over the horizon or, a long ways away. So I was able to support my country and do what was necessary and still not have that feeling of having pulled the trigger. I'm still working on it, how I can live with it, but I was able to talk the other guy who worked for me into it, and we all survived.
That's powerful, Art, and it's clear that your service not only gave you perspective, I salute you on that.
Yeah, thank you.
After your service, you went on to work with the aerospace industry, building weather and communication satellites. So quite an accomplishment. What was the experience like, and did it influence you into your writing in any way?
Well, no, actually, I didn't start writing until after I retired. And at the same time that I was writing, I was also working with the homeless community in our area, trying to, in effect, compensate, for having killed people, now to give them homes, food, shelter, and help them survive on their own. And I know they were, our own people, so that was not quite as bad, but I really enjoyed, even to this day, I still work designing, being an engineer, I do quite well at designing buildings and designing places for homeless people to stay, to live, and survive. I tend to think of it in the back of my mind as a compensation of some kind for having been on the other end of the rifle, so to speak. And I have a lot of friends who appreciate me giving them home and places to live and food to eat who might otherwise have not made it in life. And that now is my goal, is to see how many people I can help survive to counteract the number of people that I, so to speak, didn't help survive. But as a retiree, it is very satisfactory and filled with satisfaction to be able to see people survive and help them. I had a Marine, ex-Marine was one of my homeless guys that I got acquainted with here in the county. And I used to question him about what he did, and he said he was a sharpshooter. He fired a rifle at people hundreds of yards away, and he got to be very accurate at killing people. And I couldn't think of what to say to that, but I said, "What?" He said, "Why did you get out of the Marine Corps?" And he said, "Oh, I'll tell you, I hated killing people, and I wanted to stop." So I thought, no, there's a guy I should have got to know better to write my book, because he had more to tell me about it. But It's interesting to run into people like that.
It is a noble deed of serving people while you're having it as a noble act of giving back to your kind. And I know having those experiences in war is not as beautiful as we try to imagine in action movies. We are talking about real life in real situation, and I know it's hard to talk about it. It can be traumatic to others, and others are trying to get what we could have learned from them.
There are parts in my book, of course, where talk about the religion, the various religions in the world, and their reaction to it and how I felt. And I'm not going to tell you any details about it because I want you to read my book first, of course. But nevertheless, religion does play an important part. Whichever religion you are, I discuss in my book, and it's a very important consideration when you're dealing with that problem.
I will read, no worries. I will read your book. It got me intrigued on those parts, yes. So, now, aside from War is Hell, Art, have you written any other book or works that explore similar themes?
Yeah, I've written 3 other books called A Hero's Life and The War We Almost Lost, which was about World War II. And then the third one is A Journey to Hangtown Haven. That's a true story of the homeless things we built here in the county that I designed, and the interesting interaction we had with the people that were homeless. So there's one about homeless, one about World War II, and another one, War is Hell. So a little bit different. I'm sorry, you've got that one. Hero's Life, I'm trying to say. And it's similar to War is Hell in a lot of respects, but it's a part true story of my cousin I grew up with and how he was killed. But anyway, those are the 4 books that
Each book adds another layer to your journey and offers reader, of course, new insight.
Yeah, that's very well put. I agree.
Now, many of our listeners are aspiring writers themselves. Now, based on your own journey, what advice would you give to budding authors, especially to those who may have starting later in life or coming from a completely different career background like yours?
Well, it's difficult to say because I'm sure it's a different travel for each person to live and experience in life. But you need, first of all, to develop a curiosity and an interest in these things and how they are part of our lives and affect us and are in the background to many people. And you need to know some history. I love history. I read history books all the time, particularly military history, of course. But I recommend reading things about history and how other people dealt with that same issue, the same problem, and survived. And I guess some didn't. Like my Marine friend who was very embarrassed about all the people he had killed in the war. But it's a journey through life. It's hard to predict and hard to describe, but don't be afraid to take that journey. I would advise to young people, and don't be afraid to write it down in some manner that you're good at, and the first efforts you make won't be very, that good, but don't give up. Keep trying, keep at it, listen to advice from experienced writers. And of course, I can jokingly say, marry a woman who is an ex-English teacher. That always helps out. But it's a journey, and that's all I can say. And sometimes journeys are successful, and sometimes are not, but they're all worth taking.
Such excellent advice. I think a lot of listeners will really connect with that, and it's never too late to tell their story, our stories. And for that, do you intend to write more books in the future, or is there another story you're hoping to bring to life?
Well, I have other stories, but I'm 93 years old,
Oh,
and I would be very happy if I could just sell my 4 books. So at the moment, I'm trying to negotiate with sales, and to the point that I really don't have, and it's getting more difficult to write, and with typewriter and so forth. To answer your question simply, no, I'm not planning any more books. Although I have to admit, I've got some in the back of my mind. If I were 20 years younger, I would write more books, but I'm going to live with the 4 that I've got, I think.
but Art, you don't sound like you're 93 years old.
Thank you. Thank you.
Okay. Now, to add this up, is there any takeaways from your book that you wanted to have your listeners or to your readers?
Well, I tend to think of things that actually I hope I give people something to think about. That's the main thing. And any decisions or conclusions that you reach for reading of it has got to be yours. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. There's nothing I can tell you that get better from the book. And you can track it from a Christian standpoint or a Buddhist standpoint or a religious or non-religious standpoint, actually, if you want. But that's up to you. That's your conclusion. And I hope I have written the book in a broad enough way that each person may take a different conclusion from the book just based on his or her own experience in life and what has gone through themselves. Some people have faced death themselves. Some people have faced killing people themselves. So they would have a different summary, so to speak, of what the book is trying to say. And I'd rather not say any more than that because I want you to read the book and come to your own conclusion and end up the book by saying, oh, so that's what he meant. And it's going to be different for everybody.
Thank you so much for that, Art. Thank you also for being our guest here in Writer's Way podcast. I hope that you enjoyed your time with us here.
Thank you very much for having me. I really appreciated it. I love to talk.
So as ours, Art, we love to talk also. And thank you for being our guest. Now that was Art Edwards or Arthur Edwards, the brilliant author of The War is Hell, a tale of war and one man's search for meaning. We hope you were inspired as his story as we were. Thank you so much to our listeners for tuning in, and be sure to check out War is Hell, available now wherever the books are sold. And join us again for another heartfelt conversation, the Writer's Way podcast. Until next time, stay inspired and keep reading. Bye for now.